Hello and welcome to Right Sports Talk. My name is Zach, and with the United Football League starting their training camps later this week, I figured now would be a good time for me to kind of run through some notable players, or at least players that I find notable, names that I recognize, people that just kind of look out for on UFL rosters currently. I'm going to start off with the Arlington Renegades. First player is Vic Beasley. You may recognize that name. The defensive end. He was a first-round draft pick of the Atlanta Falcons back in 2015, and he played in the NFL from 2015 to 2020. Last season, he played in the XFL for the Vegas Vipers, who are no longer a team, and his contract was picked up by the Renegades. The next notable player is Marquette King, the punter for the Renegades. He's another player that has NFL experience. He was on the Raiders from 2012 to 2016, I want to say. And then he spent a season with the Broncos in 2017. And he's also been in the XFL. He was in the XFL 2020 before it shut down. And then he was on the Arlington Renegades last season, and he's back this season. The reason he's notable as a punter is because he is a very athletic punter. He has a very big personality. He's a punter that he's very, very good at punting, and he's also very athletic and just it's a very, very big personality and looks like he just really likes to, have fun out on the football field. The last notable player I have for them is Luis Perez, their quarterback. This guy he's basically Mr. Spring League. He has bounced around all over Spring Leagues. He was in the All-American Football League, the AAFL back in 2019 before it shut down. He was in the first iteration of the XFL in 2020 before it shut down. He spent a season in the USFL in 2022, and last season he was back in the XFL. He's back this year. He was the quarterback for the Renegades last year when they won the XFL championship. I think he's just a player to look out for. He has just been all over spring football leagues. Moving on to the Birmingham Stallions. First player I've got is Slade Bolden, a wide receiver. He played college football at Alabama. If you followed Alabama or knew anything about Alabama during this time frame, he was basically Mac Jones's go-to guy at receiver. And he spent a little bit of time in the NFL in 2022, I believe a little bit last year on the Ravens, and suffered some injuries and did not make it in the NFL, but I think he's a guy that you could look out for in the the UFL. Next I've got is Matt Corral, quarterback. I quarterbacked Ole Miss and ended of the 2021 season. He looked poised to be one of the top quarterback prospects in the 2022 NFL draft. He unfortunately suffered an injury during his bowl game that season and went from a guy that was thought of to be a first or second round draft pick, wound up being a third round pick to Carolina that season. He suffered a season-ending injury in the preseason, his rookie year, so he didn't get a shot in Carolina his rookie year. And then they went and brought in Bryce Young last year with the number 1 overall pick, and he wound up at the end of the preseason actually signing with the Patriots last season, but wound up leaving the team due to, I believe it was mental health related issues. I'm not too sure, but he's a guy that I'm kind of glad to see back in football. I'm trying to get back into football, which is nice. The next player I want to talk about is Kenny Robinson, a safety for the Stallions. He's a player that kind of made a history back in 2020 with the XFL. he was the only player in the XFL that season that was eligible for the 2020 NFL draft, which took place after the original XFL season was scheduled to end. He's a player that he played football at West Virginia, and I believe he was going to be suspended. And rather than staying at West Virginia and dealing with a suspension, he left school, went to the XFL, and wound up being drafted into the NFL by, I want to say, the Rams, and he played in the NFL for a few seasons, and now he's back in spring football. Next thing I want to talk about is Amari Rodgers, former wide receiver. He was a wide receiver for the Packers, and I believe he played some time on the Texans. He's a player that's a very talented wide receiver, but while he was on the Packers, he couldn't really get into the rotation as a receiver very often. So they tried him out as a return guy. That didn't work out. They wound up releasing him. He wound up, going to different NFL teams, and he's back and playing in the UFL. Next I want to talk about is Bo Scarborough, a running back. This is a player that I remember seeing coming out of Alabama. I remember seeing him in the preseason of 2018 for the Cowboys and thinking that he was going to be like one of the next great running backs in the NFL. Unfortunately, he didn't catch on with the Cowboys. He bounced around a little bit, went to the Jaguars for a little bit of time, but never actually played on their active roster. He also played in Detroit and Seattle on their active rosters and did decent. And this is his third season back. He was on the Stallions for the past 2 seasons while they were part of the USFL, and he was part of their 2 championship teams. And now he's back for a third season with them. The final guy I want to talk about for the Stallions is Scooby Wright. Scooby Wright is a player, if you remember, was really one of the top defensive players coming out of college at Arizona State. I believe he wound up going to the Cardinals as a rookie. Didn't stick in the NFL very much. I was with the Cardinals. In 2019, he also played in the AAFL, the All-American Football League, before it shut down. Then he spent some time on the Patriots. In 2020, he was on the DC Defenders of the XFL before it shut down. And this is also his third season back in Birmingham for the Stallions. Moving on, I'll talk about the DC Defenders. First player of note is Abram Smith. He was the XFL's leading rusher last season. That's really what I want to talk about him, because he had a really good year for them last year in the XFL, and he's a really talented running back to watch going into this season. Next is DJ Swearinger, a defensive back for the Defenders. He was a second-round draft pick to the Texans back in 2013, and he played in the NFL from 2013 to 2020, and so he's got NFL caliber talent. He is a little older now. I believe he's early 30s, so trying to get a second shot with the UFL to continue his football career. Final guy I've got for DC is a guy that is Jordan Ta'amu. So I have a question mark next to him just because he's not officially listed on their roster page, but it was reported by XFL analyst Facebook page that he was going to training camp for them. So if he is, this is a really good quarterback option for them. He is a guy that, again, he was in the XFL in 2020. Before it shut down, he was in contention for MVP. He was having that good of a season. He's also spent time in the USFL. He was in the XFL last year as the DC Defenders starting quarterback and had a really good year. He's a very talented quarterback, and if he is going to play in the XFL this season, I very much look forward to seeing him playing. The next team is the Houston Roughnecks. Player to talk about first is Reuben Foster, a linebacker out of Alabama. He was a first-round draft pick in 2017 to the San Francisco 49ers. And he played 4 seasons in the NFL. He had some off the field issues and some injury concerns that forced him out of the NFL. And last season, he was picked up by the USFL playing in Pittsburgh. He's a very talented linebacker, and he's very talented, and I think he did very well last season, so I think he could continue to do well in the UFL. Last guy I want to talk about for the Roughnecks is Ryan Izzo, a tight end. He's a player that was drafted by the Patriots in 2018. He played for them for 3 years, was on their Super Bowl roster in 2018, and so he played in the NFL on an active roster from 2018 to 2020. He bounced around different teams, not actually sticking to a roster for 21 and 22. And last season made his return, played in the USFL for the Philadelphia Stars, who no longer exist. His contract was picked up by the Houston Roughnecks, and he looks to continue to have a good career in the USFL, or the UFL. The next, Memphis Showboats. First player I want to talk about is Case Cookus, their quarterback. He's a player that from 2020 to 2021 bounced around different NFL teams. The one I can think of the most was the Minnesota Vikings. He was on in 2022. Between 2022 and 2023, he was in the USFL. And then 2022 off season, or NFL preseason, he was in training camp with the Los Angeles Rams, and ultimately wound up not making the team. Went back to the USFL in 2023, and is now on the Memphis Showboats for the UFL. Next time I'll talk about Dylan Moses, was a linebacker out of Alabama who, when he was at Alabama, you could see he had just tremendous talent, was NFL caliber, but he suffered some injuries that kind of slowed down his football career, wound up not making it in the NFL. Again, another very talented player looking to continue their football career in the UFL. And one guy I kind of want to touch on a little bit is Vinny Papale. If the last name Papale sounds familiar, that is because he's the son of former Eagles wide receiver, who was wide receiver for the Eagles in the late 70s, Vince Papale. If Vince Papale's name sounds familiar, it's because he is the subject of the movie Invincible. So I just wanted to mention Vinny Papale a little bit, just because of the connection with his father. He's got a father that played in the NFL. Moving on to the Michigan Panthers, I've got starting off with Danny Etling, a player that again has some NFL experience. Most notably, I remember him on the New England Patriots when he was a rookie in 2017. In the preseason, he took a quarterback bootleg, 86 yards for a touchdown. So he's got a lot of athleticism. He hasn't proven to be the greatest arm talent at quarterback, at least not NFL caliber. We'll see how he does in the UFL. He's just a very athletic quarterback that at the very least can make plays with his legs. Next up, I'm going to talk about another quarterback, E.J. Perry. E.J. Perry is a quarterback who was on the Michigan roster last season and helped lead them to the playoff. He helped get playing time for them and helped them when helped them where needed, and was a part of the team that went to the playoffs last season. The next two players are Kai and Samson Nacua. Kai Nacua is a safety. Samson Nacua is a wide receiver. If those names sound familiar, if Nacua sounds familiar, they are both brothers of Rams wide receiver Puka Nacua. Kai, of the two, has had the most NFL experience. He spent time on NFL rosters from 2017 to 2019, and in 3 seasons, he only recorded 19 tackles. He was mainly just a special teams guy that was just on the roster. Samson Nacua is the other older brother of Puka. Kai is the oldest, and Samson. He went undrafted out of BYU in 2022 and hasn't stuck around any NFL rosters. And just name value guys, they have a brother that has made it to the NFL, and at least Kai has had NFL experience and looks to be a really good player. Samson is to be seen. Just a name that I wanted to talk about. And the last guy for Michigan is Trey Quinn, wide receiver. He was a 7th-round draft pick back in 2018 out of, I believe, SMU. He had a very good college career. He wound up going to the Commanders in the 7th round in 2018 and bounced around NFL teams for a few years. And in 2023 was on the Michigan Panthers roster and played very well. Moving on to the San Antonio Brahmas. I'm going to start off with Matt Amendola, who's a kicker who has NFL experience. He was on an NFL roster as recently as last season. He was on the Houston Texans last season for a little bit when they had their kicker out with injury. I think he's just a guy to watch in the UFL. Another guy, also a kicker, is Donald De La Haye. You may also know him by Destroying, the YouTuber. His story is kind of interesting. He was a kicker in college at Central Florida, and he started a YouTube channel. Well, his YouTube channel took off, and he started making money from that, which this is before all the NIL stuff in college football. So he was told he could either stop playing football or stop making YouTube videos or stop making money from YouTube. Well, he chose to stop playing football and continue YouTube. And on his YouTube channel, he has videos with him kicking. He still has a very good leg. He, a few years ago, got an invitation to the training camp with the Toronto Argonauts. Unfortunately, did not make the team there. Kind of hope he can make the team here in San Antonio and be a guy that was able to bet on himself for being a content creator and then ultimately come back to football. That'd be a really nice story. The final guy I want to talk about for San Antonio is Cody Latimer. He's a wide receiver / tight end. He was a 2nd-round pick to the Denver Broncos in 2014, 2015. He was on their 2015 roster. He actually caught Peyton Manning's last ever throw as a 2-point conversion in Super Bowl 50. So another guy that's very talented. He's got NFL caliber talent. He's been on NFL rosters and just trying to show what he can do in the UFL. I believe he was on an XFL roster last season as well. So he's continuing his football career in the UFL. The final team to talk about is the St. Louis Battlehawks. The first player I want to talk about is Hakeem Butler, wide receiver. This guy is a physical freak. He's 6'5", somewhere between 225 and 230 pounds. Got good speed. You throw it up to him, and basically he's going to go up and compete for the ball. I remember his big issue. He was on the Battlehawks last season. I remember his big issue was mainly catching. If he can get that figured out, he's going to be dangerous. He's a player that also he was on the Cardinals before going to the XFL, and this past season he was in training camp with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's just a big physical wide receiver that's going to be somebody to watch. Next, I want to talk about Darius Shepard, a wide receiver for the Battlehawks, and a wide receiver. He was the 2023 XFL Special Teams Player of the Year. So last year he was the best special teams player in the XFL, mainly due to his kick returning ability. I'm kind of interested to see how he does this year because the UFL is going to have a more traditional kickoff than the XFL did. So the XFL, players that were lined up, 5 yards apart from each other, and then once the ball was caught is when the kickoff team would go try to make the tackles. And the UFL is going to have the traditional kickoff style, so he's going to have guys kind of bearing down quicker. So I'm interested to see how he does with those circumstances, to see if he can continue to be an electrifying return man. And the final guy I want to talk about is A.J. McCarron, quarterback. A.J. McCarron is a guy that played college ball at Alabama, was drafted in 2015 to the Bengals, He also played on the Raiders in the NFL and a couple other NFL teams. 2023 actually had a shot to continue staying in the NFL as a backup, but chose to go to the XFL with St. Louis because he had a chance. He could be the starter in St. Louis in the XFL. And the reason he chose to go to the XFL as opposed to staying in the NFL as backup is because he wanted his kids to be able to see him play football. Like, his kids knew that he played football, but they'd never actually seen him get any playing time in a meaningful game. So he chose to go to the XFL to be a starter and allow his children to be able to see him play. And this past year, he spent some time back with the Bengals as a backup after Joe Burrow got injured, but he's back in the XFL and looking to make some plays. And I'm very excited to see all of these players in the XFL this season. Hopefully, all of them can make rosters and continue their continue their playing careers. All right, so please let me know in the comments if there's anybody that you are really excited for the UFL, and notable players that you have that I didn't talk about. Maybe players you know more about than I do that you just want to let me know about. Also, if you could like and subscribe, it'd be awesome. See you guys next time.